Start.
Hi, I'm Shreya Krishnan and I'm coming live from Radio Active 90.4 and we're talking about World Poetry Day.
Hi, I'm Pinky Chandran, and you're listening to Radio Active 90.4. And happy World Poetry Day.
So, we're here to talk about poetry.
So, Shreya, we all have that one poem, and then many poems. So, what's your favorite poem?
I think when I was growing up, I remember reading both Hindi, Kannada, English were the three languages that we studied. So we did poems in all languages, and I remember one favorite one in each of them. So, if you were to ask me to pick one, that would be really hard. But I'll tell you what I remember. I remember daffodils. I remember Mankutimma. It used to be called Mankutimana Kaggagalu by D.V. Gundappa, who's a Kannada poet. And of course, Hindi poetry had different meanings. And I remember one which was on patriotism and the national flag. And that also, vaguely now rings a bell. But I think growing up, childhood poetry was all about that. What was in your textbooks. Because otherwise, and then those little Hindu used to have this piece where children would write poetry and send it in. So I think those, growing up, those were. What about you? What about?
I think I remember Kabir in Hindi class, and then I remembered, and then the Shakespeare, All World's a Stage.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I've had mixed feelings while growing up whether I really enjoyed poetry or not. But it was a very high-scoring subject for me. So I must say I enjoyed it. But I actually truly fell in love with poetry in my Sanskrit class. Because I think there was something so romantic about the way it was written, or maybe it was because of my Sanskrit teachers and the way they would describe. It would paint images of what was happening. So I remember, reading this one thing from Kalidasa, where he's describing the woman, the lady, and says the slender young woman who's there would be the premier creation of the Creator in the sphere of women, with fine teeth, lips like a ripe bimba fruit, a slim waist, eyes like a startled gazelle, a deep navel, a gait slow on account of the weight of her hips. You could just imagine that lady out there, and it was so beautiful because even the settings, the scenes, and I think after that was in class 8th. Yeah. After that, I think I started falling in love with poems.
Right. Strangely, when you read this poem, I suddenly realized all of the stuff that my mum would try and make me and my brother read out. The shlokas, the Lakshmi, the Saraswati, the goddesses, they're all actually Sanskrit, right? And so that's all poetry.
It is.
And now looking back, this conversation just reminded me of the fact that, all shlokas, all the, bhakti songs, all of that's poetry, Sufi poetry,
Yes.
Urdu
Rumi.
poetry, Rumi. It's just, I think poetry is a world in itself.
So I remember Rumi's one poem which says, listen to the presences inside poems. Let them take you where they will. Follow those private hints and never leave the premise.
That reminds me of Khalil Gibran and The Prophet. The Prophet is basically a book that Khalil Gibran wrote, and he writes about love, he writes about, but the one thing that stuck to me, and I was young when I read this, I'm a parent now, but at that time I was still a young girl. But even at that time, there is this thing he writes about parenting. And he says, we are but bows from which go forth the arrows that are our children.
Oh.
We can only point in that direction and let them go. That journey is their own.
Oh wow.
To that effect. I'm not recreating it the way it was, but I think, when you read pieces like this, it somewhat sticks with you.
That's so
for
true.
life.
That's so true.
Yeah, it's life learnings in the form of poetry,
I know. Which reminds me of the fact that when I first read this poem about the two roads converged into, I'm not getting
The road less traveled.
the road less traveled, yes. And I kept thinking, how do you apply something like that to your daily life? In fact, actually, it was only after the Sanskrit class that I actually started looking for hidden meanings in the poem. Because one is when the teacher or the lecturer would talk about it, you'd be like, ah, okay, okay, fine. But when you really apply it
Yeah.
to life, that's when you actually fall in love with poetry.
And each poem does different things to different people.
Correct.
Like you will see it from your lens, I will see it from mine.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of poetry, because it builds a personal experiential journey for each person reading it. Miles to go before I sleep.
Mm.
Another line that, it means there's so much meaning to that. And poetry is timeless, ageless. I don't
is.
think there's anything about poetry that you can say this time frame or this, whatever it is, Victorian era, Elizabethan era, that there was a whole metaphysical era where poems were graphic and violent and I remember a metaphysical poem where the guy says, this little flea that has bitten both of us, our blood has already united within the four walls of its stomach.
Oh, wow.
To that effect. So gory, dark poetry. But I think, look at poetry, the genres and the timelines and love and romance and so much to it. Poetry is
much.
cathartic.
I remember, in fact, we had this, we had this newspaper called the Student Mail newspaper while we were in school, and the poems would all be about love. It would be about longings. It would sometimes be about cat or a dog, and then there would be some about exam stress. So that was one, whole writing of poems. At that time, I didn't write poems. I mean, I did write, but I would write it in my diary, close it, and hide
Keep it away.
Yes, I have the book still. And now I look back at that, I'm like, oh wow, I did have a nice handwriting. But I don't know what I wrote about. I would just pick up something from the newspaper, like a theme or something like that. And I think those days we would, I can't take the newspaper name, but yeah, we would get one of the traditional newspapers. And so we'd just pick up themes and write it about. And then came these other women's magazines, the popular ones.
Yeah,
and
the
they
digests. Yeah.
no, the popular women's magazines
Oh, yes,
of those
yes,
times.
yes.
I can't name it. But then, okay, let me. And they had such classic poems written by readers.
Readers, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the depth of poems made me really wonder. Like I started taking more interest in it. What about you?
So for me, I think poetry came to me at a point in time when I was battling my anger with mathematics. Maths tuitions would be terrible, and PU maths was complicated. There was trigonometry. I think trigonometry led me to poetry in some form, and that's also poetic in some sense, because I hated math. And in math tuitions, you had to sit, and I would fall asleep because it'd be so boring. And then people will pick on you if you fall asleep. So I would start writing poetry in the backs of my math tuition class books.
Do you recollect any?
I think I may still have some of them. I wrote
Out
about.
memory. Can you think of it?
I wrote about. I think when my grandpa passed away, I wrote a poem on him, and he was the one who I grew up with, listening to all these proverbs, and he would say, "Bird in hand worth two in a bush, penny wise, pound foolish." A fool learns from his own. Wise men learn from others' mistakes. A fool learns from his own mistake. So I remember writing a poem on him, and this was again in math tuition. So I think to me, poetry came to me like that. It was a journey into actually channeling my energies from something that I disliked into something I liked, and that's how the writing started.
No. So can you remember anything of what you mentioned?
I remember one a little later that I wrote, and I wrote about how the rainbow is an illusion of color.
Okay.
And I compared it with this person I had a crush on. And this person was a lot older to me. I must have been 17 or 18, and this person was in his 30s. So I wrote about how he was like an illusion of the rainbow, how it's enticing and beautiful, and then he fade away into oblivion. I think that's how the poem ended.
Oh.
So it's interesting, right? So I remember that poem. Yeah, if you ask me to recall from my
I know
early
it's
writing
hard.
days, I remember that one. And I was so awed by him. So the poem was all about those. It was a metaphor. The rainbow was a metaphor to my to the way I looked at him, and yeah.
So, on this note, I think we should ask our listeners if to send us,
Poems.
send us poems or their favorite childhood poems that that has stayed with them over the years, or they have probably outgrown it, or there's a poem that has actually left some mark somewhere. Is there any poem that you recollect that has left a mark on you?
There was this poem about a woman.
Huh.
She walks in beauty like a cloud. I think that's how it started. I still remember the little illustration it had. It had the silhouette of a woman's face and her hair, and that poem was beautiful because it spoke of the strength of the woman. Again, I'm not able to recall the lines in exact structure, but it spoke about how a woman is who she is because all of the experiences that have shaped her, that have given her strength. And I think empowerment at that point in time also spoke to me.
So, this reminds me of The Phenomenal Woman by everybody's favorite. I mean, my favorite. Can you guess who it is? I'm going to read out the poem now.
Okay.
So it says, "Pretty women, wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl in my lips. I'm a woman. Phenomenal woman. That's me. I walk into a room, just as cool as you please, and to a man, the fellow stands or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman. Phenomenal woman. That's me. Can you guess it?
Maya Angelou.
Yes.
Another one which is one of my favorites of Maya Angelou is I Rise.
Oh yeah, I love
I
that.
Rise is
I
again a
love that.
beautiful, beautiful Maya Angelou poem.
I am going to, when we take a break and towards our last segment, and I'm going to read out something that poem has inspired me
To write?
in my work with the waste picker community, as a tribute to the waste picker community.
Wow. So yeah, it's surreal, right? What little things that we read and all of that comes into our own poetry.
That's true.
And our style is very spoken word, both of us write spoken word poetry. But it's amazing how it just brings people together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll take a break now,
Yeah.
and then let's call our friends who can't come into the studio because of social distancing, and
Reach out for poetry when you're social distancing.
Yes.
It can open up a beautiful world for you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's call people and
Yeah.
ask them to share, and we're encouraging people to share in different languages, and let's see who gets to the phone or who answers
Yeah.
the phone, and then we'll be back for more.